Good morning, everybody. This is the ICT Educator webinar series for the fall of 2020, and I'm Steve Wright, the statewide director of the ICT sector team. On our website, you can see who else is on our team. We have 10 regional directors, and of course, Nicole Sherman, who's our producer of this series and pretty much the godmother of all the stuff we do and produce on webinars and newsletters and that sort of thing. So we appreciate her very much. On our website, you can find a lot of pathways, materials, and archives of our other recorded webinars, which are now grouped in categories for you to find them. We go back almost 2 years now. Each webinar is video recorded, which is then edited and out all the oohs and ahs and chapterized so you can go to the part you want. We have provided a complete transcript along with the PowerPoint presentations and relevant links for later use. So we've had over 3,000 views to date, and many of our faculty tell us this is a wonderful resource for the classroom or for grant writing or for other projects that they're working on. In the next few weeks, we're going to be taking a look at digital credentials. Remember digital badges? We call them digital credentials now. And we'll have Peter Janzow from the VP of Credly talk to us about what's going on in industry and what are they recognizing in different colleges, and that's going to be great. And then we're going to hear from Peter Coffey on October 2nd about the future now that we've got COVID, and his reaction is the future came 5 years early. Then we'll be taking a look at cloud curriculum as it's being introduced and handled in the Bay region. And for that, we'll have Richard back again. And today, the purpose, we're going to be looking at the NETLAB user group, which has Richard originally started that a few years back. Sean Monson managed it for a while. Now Richard's back again. And this is our NETLAB user group meeting, which we want to feature here on the ICT Educator series because there's a lot people need to know about the NETLAB capability. I was just looking at the strong workforce investments that we've made, and I identified, I stopped at 20 projects totaling over $6 million related to NETLAB or groups of NETLABs or various resources associated with NETLAB. So it's a big investment, and a NETLAB user group like this helps us expand it. So today we're going to get an update on NETLAB itself, and we're also going to look at some new applications that will help with our digital media and business office solutions type people. So Richard, I'm going to turn it over to you now to introduce our other speakers and go ahead. But I think first we're going to start with a survey. In front of you, by the way, you're looking at the NETLAB user group site, which is where you can find all the archival information on NETLAB. But we're going to go ahead with a survey now on who you are that are here right now. So if you would just let us know where you're coming from, it helps us gauge our conversation a little bit. Look at those numbers. I mean, I can see the answers as they're building. Can everybody else see that, or is that just having?
It's just the host. Just the host can see that.
Well, this is fun. Okay. All right. I think we could probably share that now. It's good. So it's primarily a California Community College crowd, which is our target audience, although we have invited K through 12 to join us. So you K through 12 people out there, you got to spread the word to the other people. This is open to K through 12 ICT people. It's actually open to anybody, but we really like you guys when you join. Okay, I've said enough. I'm going to turn it over to Richard. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Steve. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Yeah, I'm happy to come back to the NETLAB users group. I thought this was a valuable community of practice that we want to keep going. It is statewide, and I want to participate from my Bay Area position. And glad to kick this off. This is our first quarterly meeting of the academic year. We want to try to meet again. We'll be updating our website because we have some new things to talk about with NETLAB, and I'm really thrilled to have Jason Zeller on board. Jason has been a huge supporter for us and done quite a few of our trainings over the summer. And he's on today to talk about what's new with NETLAB and what's happening with them. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Jason.
So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jason Zeller. I'm with Network Development Group. I also work as a full-time instructor at Fort Hays State University. So I understand what it's like to use this in and out of the classroom, as well as a little bit on the back end from NDG. So what do we have new coming out this year? There's a few content releases, some of the big features that we're trying to come out with, hopefully by the end of the year. The first one's going to be LMS integration, and this is a pretty big one. I would call it pre-alpha testing this right now. But the benefits of having LMS integration is no longer having to create user accounts on the NetLab system. It actually integrates within the different LMSs, which also allow you to link specific labs directly out of the LMS. And like I said, I'm kind of pre-alpha testing that this fall, and it's fantastic for students. They can pick the different labs that they want, but they can also get directly into the NetLab system without having to do any more logins. So single sign-on works fantastic. So with the automatic grading and such like that, that's part of the LMS stuff that we're looking at as well. And then in our lab designs, if you guys haven't written any lab designs here recently, you may have seen that we have the ability for you to hide virtual machines as well as completely turn off virtual machines within the lab design environment as well. We've had a lot of content releases here in 2020, particularly with the Cisco Academy. So many of you are familiar with the multi-device pod for the CCNA coursework. You should see a pod like you see over there on the left-hand side, which uses 2 routers, 2 switches, and then we have 2 PCs that come off of that. And this covers all of your CCNA curriculum, 1, 2, and 3. We also have support for the older MAP and MAP ASA pods. So if you guys have any issues with that, or need to work with the older equipment until you can get the newer routers in, those old pod topologies are certified for these 3 curriculums. And this is all for the 7.0 CCNA. You can see all the labs here. As you'll notice, between CCNA 1, 2, and then 3, the labs kind of tier off. There are certain labs are available, and we're still working to get more and more of these labs supported in the future. We also released IT Essentials version 7. There's 39 labs available for that, including Windows 10 as well as 8.1 for inside of that pod topology. On the Palo Alto front, we released Palo Alto 9 labs, which most of you guys have probably used so far if you're using the Palo Alto curriculum. What's nice about the 9 labs is we have removed Windows from that, so there's no longer a Windows requirement. It now uses Linux inside for the client. You can also see that within Cybersecurity Gateway. You'll see that there's no Windows required here, and there's also no internet required for the Cybersecurity Gateway labs. And then for the bigger firewall labs, you have the 9.0 ones, which use the Windows client, but you also have the 9.1, which is the exact same lab set. It just no longer has the Windows requirement and has the Linux made available. From the University of South Carolina, we've released some lab sets that they've been working on with some NSF grants. Ones in particular are going to be their network tools and protocols, or their high-speed networks labs. These are fantastic labs to add to any of your CCNA curriculum, as well as any other graduate or undergraduate work. What's great about them is they're going to go into in-depth explanation of TCP, as well as buffer size and how latency will play a role in that. And there's a bunch of labs that you typically talk about in theory, but you usually don't have any kind of labs to go against them. This lab set helps fill that gap. So if you're interested in that, definitely take a look at those. We also have labs available for perf sonar. If you're not familiar with what perf sonar is, it's commonly used by internet service providers as well as backbone providers in order to determine latency and bandwidth delay. So you'll see several labs in getting trained on how to do perf sonar. So if you've got students or learners that are looking to work in the ISP space, these are a great lab set to help prep them for that environment. And then last but not least, we have the Zeek intrusion detection. If you guys are familiar with IDSs, you may know of Bro. Bro has been rebranded to Zeek, and so these lab sets are going to focus on intrusion detection. I actually use them inside of my network defense courses, and they have gotten great feedback from the students and really jumping deep into the Zeek and understanding what intrusion detection is and how we can do different things based on what we find when we get an intrusion detection. As far as NetLab Plus content that we have coming up here for the rest of the year, in the VMware IT Academy, we have ICMware, the ICM V7 course. That should be out here sometime in fall of 2020 before Christmas. It's currently under QA review. We have VMware ONS version 7. That should be ready for the spring 2021 semester. And it's currently in development, and they're editing and going through each lab. In the CCNA, we have the new CCNA CyberOps Associate. We should have those labs released here before Christmas of 2020. As far as I know, they're currently under QA review, so they should be coming here sometime soon. In the CCNP version 8, we're working on some of these labs, but we definitely are curious how many of you guys are actually teaching CCNP. We haven't seen a huge demand for this lab library, as CCNP has kind of fallen off in a lot of academies. And so we value your input as to whether or not you need these. If you do, by far, go ahead and put them into the Zoom chat, and I'd be happy to take that feedback and make sure that we continue working on CCNP if you're using those labs. We also have a packet tracer lab that they're currently working on, which is a fantastic lab, especially with COVID and everything going on with distance learning. With the packet tracer pod, all it is a packet tracer running on a Linux virtual machine, and it has access out to netacad.com. Therefore, you can download the labs, and you can use the different labs to accomplish all the things that are in CCNA. It's a great add-on lab. Again, it's just a real small, lightweight virtual machine that will get you access to packet tracer, and has kind of gone through the paces and done the labs against those. And so far in the beta test that we've done with this pod, we've gotten great feedback as a great tool and a great mechanism for schools. For the packet tracer pod, you can see that here. I mean, it schedules just like everything else. So if you guys are familiar with the NETLAB Plus system, you can install this on your NETLAB side and make that available to the students. The look and feel of it boots up right here. As they log in or they boot up the virtual machine, it will immediately take them to the NetCAD website, and they can log in there and then download the labs that are necessary for them to complete. It's a great pod, and we're also looking at expanding that for an IoT pod. So if you guys are getting some IoT curriculum together for your different universities or colleges or education centers, we're looking at developing this IoT pod. Again, if you guys are interested in that, please put that in the chat. I'd be happy to report that back so we can get some numbers as to the interest on the IoT side. Other curriculum that we've released, this is actually released now, is the NDG Ethical Hacking version 2 course. This was updated this summer. There's 18 labs that are based and released on open source, so there's no Windows currently. You'll see Windows labs that are up, or the Windows machine that's up there in the upper right. Those will be released separately as a second lab set as part of this, and those will be released sometime prior to Christmas. Only the virtual machines that are required during those labs are turned on. So this is one of the first labs that we've taken advantage of the new technology under the hood that will only fire up the virtual machines that are necessary for the pod, therefore giving more resources to the server itself and allow you to eventually have more pods depending on what lab is being accomplished. The topology itself changes depending on the lab, so it's very similar to like a Cisco environment. You'll only see what is necessary for those particular labs. And we've mapped this particular lab set out to objectives for popular certifications, including EC Council Certified Ethical Hacker, and then as well as CompTIA's Pen Test Plus. And as you see over there on the lower right-hand side, we've mapped them to these two books as well. So as an instructor, if you're always looking for learning materials, we've mapped these labs to these two books, telling you which chapter maps which objective, which matches with which lab. So there's a ton of information there and a great resource for students that are looking to study for these particular certifications. We're also working on Forensics version 2. Those should be available here prior to Christmas in 2020. We've been working with industry professionals in order to bring this particular lab set in and creating labs both for beginners as well as advanced. Again, mapping to cert objectives. They're a little long, but they're great, thorough labs for beginners. For the CompTIA ones, we also plan to release an update to the CYSA labs. Those should be available here in the spring of 2021. And then NDG also is offering the A+ version 4. Those should be available here prior to Christmas in 2020. They're going through final QA. For the Security Plus, those aren't currently in the lineup, only because if I remember right, they're releasing the new exam this fall, and therefore we're still working to wait for the release of that exam as well as the books and materials so that we can map that across. We have a similar thing with CYSA. The books aren't being released until about November. They're delayed beyond what the exam release date is, and so hopefully we can get those out once we get the books out there. From the University of South Carolina, they're looking at releasing 3 or at least 2 to 3 lab sets again by this fall. The first one, and they'll all be in alpha stage to initially release. They'll have one on BGP security, which is a great one for your advanced students, and then also one on software-defined networks, and they'll have some labs available for that. So if you're interested in those two, I highly encourage you to take a look at those and pay attention to our website and our mailing list to see when those are available on your NETLAB system. Question came in was, how different is the ITE 7 versus the A+ V4? They just map to the different objectives of those certifications. So they're going to be similar because they're going to copy or cover similar materials, but they're pretty much, as somebody mentioned there, they're complementary to one another. They're just focused on the objectives of the individual certs. From our NDG Online, for those of you that used our online service, we have done updates to the Cloud and Virtualization Concepts course, so that's now available, as well as the CCNA Cyber Operations. As soon as we get the update for the Cyber Ops Associate, you'll be able to see those labs as well. Right now, we've worked on finishing up the Cloud and Virtualization Concepts, which just moved VMware Workstation from 12 to 15.16. And then we're also updating some of the content here throughout. If you haven't used these lab sets before, they're a great lab set to introduce virtualization. So I recommend them prior to, say, VMware IT Academy labs. Students have had great success with these labs. I also recommend using these if you're teaching the Amazon cloud or any of the Amazon courses, is using this in combination with our Linux Unhatched course. And that makes for a great, well-rounded Amazon Associate certificate if you're teaching that in an 8-week or 16-week fashion. We're doing some language updates for the Linux Unhatched. You'll also see ones for English and Spanish should be available here in spring of 2021. With the NDG Cloud and Virtualization, we now have that in English and Spanish, and we hope to have French available here in spring of 2021. Again, just the labs are written in English at this time.
Jason.
Yeah.
Do the Linux labs include any of the compilers like GCC or GDB or Clang?
There's no direct labs in terms of what that's covering. As far as I'm familiar with, unless there was an update in the later Linux labs, there's nothing on that level of certification or system administration. You may find some of those in the Red Hat, but I don't have a solid answer for you on that one.
Okay, this is sort of a forward-looking question because it doesn't necessarily have to be in a lab. As long as they're installed, they're usable by people who make their own labs.
Sure. I would have to go and double check. I don't know if they have the basic dev build tools in there, but I can certainly go back to the curriculum team and see if they can add those, if that's of interest.
It's high interest. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. We also offer a new security password module. We're going to have a webinar on that here in a couple of days, next week, that will cover how to do safe passwords. This is written for a simple learner coming in and understanding the basics of passwords, as well as the ease of hacking a password, and they can get to use some tools in order to do that. It's great for a summer camp or a short chapter on password safety practices. This series will go through there and learn a little bit of Linux basics, but primarily be great to interact with the cloud and virtualization course as well. Again, we have this long link up here at the top, and I can put this here in the chat if you guys are interested in this particular webinar. Let's see, how do we do the Unhatched as an instructor-led? At this point, there's no option to do an instructor-led for the Unhatched. You can simply make your class available. You can create a class and then funnel your students into that. That's currently how I use it within the classroom. So there's some ways that you can get around and use that particular material. Outside of that, does anybody have any questions? And I appreciate all the questions, Courtney, and getting that out there. Anybody else have any other questions?
If I could just venture a comment, I mean, Jason, you and Rich Weeks, you guys are not, absolutely not asleep at the wheel. This is incredible. You guys keep bringing more value and more opportunities for our students through these upgrades, and thank you very much.
Yeah, not a problem. I definitely, with everything that's going on in the world, we have not slowed down, but if anything, sped up. So there's definitely some more offerings to help all these instructors get things done in a virtual sense if necessary.
Yeah, this is Richard. Yeah, I'd have to agree completely. Jason, thank you so much. You know, I've been involved with NetLab from the early days, I think over 15 years now using it, and just the evolution of the content that's available. So you can see it's pretty technical. I think we were going to do a little survey about interest, weren't we, Steve? Interest and experience with NetLab? If we could do
Sure,
that
why
right
don't we
now.
launch that? Let's go ahead and launch that.
So while you guys are doing that, I see a couple of questions that came up there. One of them was elaboration on the Amazon modules for AWS. All that is just from personal experience in teaching the initial AWS course that's available. I try to integrate Linux Unhatched as well as the cloud and virtualization labs in there as a precursor to teaching AWS. And that seems to help the students understand concepts that they will require within that first AWS course. So again, AWS isn't attached to NDG at all, but at the same time, our coursework helps prepare the students for that initial AWS certification. There were some questions on a Train the Trainer course. We usually have some trainings during the summer out there in California. I know things changed a little bit this summer, but we are having some webinars, and we have a pretty rigorous webinar schedule this summer, but we'll also have some this fall. If you guys are interested in that, please let us know. You can email support@netdevgroup.com at this email link that you see here on the screen. And we'll be happy to get you the latest webinars if you're not already signed up. We try to keep these webinars now to about an hour long, 2 hour long at the max, so that way they can fit your schedules and keep focused on one or two topics versus a large array of topics like we used to do in the past.
Yeah, if you could cut and paste those links and put them in the chat,
Yeah, I'd be happy to
Jason,
do that.
that'd be great.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, Jason Courtney again. And one of the things that I'm curious about and really interested in is who provides some purchase configurations for NetLab VE and supporting hardware. Is Converge One still in the picture, or who is the supporting vendor now?
Yes, so Converge One should be able to get you a quotes both for the NetLab VE as well as the new specifications that came out for the Lenovo servers. So if you're looking for new hardware, we have released new specifications. With those new specifications, they are now available to any vendor. So Converge One can definitely quote you on those. If for some reason you can't work with Converge One due to whatever purchasing requirements you have at your particular institution, there is now a billable or a BOM, a bill of materials that you can use at any vendor, and they can pull that up specifically within Lenovo servers. So we worked with Lenovo to get a much updated one and lower cost, hopefully, to the end user based on the new specifications.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can see results of the poll. We have quite a few people investigating, or none of the above. Only 41% on the poll actually currently using it. So there's a number of you out there who might have a new beginner type questions. So feel free to ask as we go along, or visit the NetLab user group website. That's I'm glad we have so many people here that are new to NetLab.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate everybody's time today. I'll get those links posted here as the new presenters go. Thanks again, Richard and Steve.
Jason, one more
thank
question.
you, Jason. Right, Courtney.
So I know that NDG switched to HTML delivery of its labs. How many distinct sessions can you typically support with reasonable responsiveness for the student?
Are you referring to the NDG Online stuff, or?
It would be helpful to know both, because some of our faculty use the online stuff. Some of them want to use the ACCC directly or possibly local hardware.
Yeah, I mean, they're currently working on getting some of the HTML5 and replacing the PDFs. That's one of the big projects that they're working on this fall. And if you're asking in terms of how many more resources or connections there, it should be the exact same as before. We haven't seen any increase in data throughput or anything like that in the long haul.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Courtney, you should check with David Hovey and with the BACCC. We've got some additional funding to really do more with our current NetLab, and we're actually looking for some additional help for David on the management of all that too. So
Sounds
could be
great.
right. It could be right in your backyard.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Thank you, Jason. And let me share my screen here. I think I can do that. Hopefully everybody can see my slide deck. This is a little bit of a reprise from last spring when the COVID pandemic hit us, and it really illuminated the opportunity that NetLab provided. So I'm here kind of representing our BACC NetLab group. We've been in business since 2015, and primarily just offering IT labs for our IT students. That's been the main focus. And as you can see from what Jason presented, there's a lot of content to support IT students learning to become IT professionals. And what we found with our shared NetLab environment, we would never go back to having our own individual implementations, because we found that by sharing, we've all gotten a lot more. And I know it's kind of a techie quote from Leonard Nimoy from Spock there, but it's so true in our case as well. So I'm actually here today to talk about what we've done additionally outside of what you've learned from Jason about offering labs, is making our NetLab available during this pandemic. And with me today is Dr. Mark Martin, who is my counterpart as a regional director for advanced manufacturing. Mark came to us with a big need for his faculty that he supports. And then we have our technical guru, David Hovey, on the call as well. So they're going to help me present the remainder of the material for today. So we have a website. Again, this was designed to support our instructors. So there's our website link. You can see there all the different labs that we have incorporated. So much of the content that Jason presented is all available at no cost to our NetLab users. So that's been one of the wonderful things. But I was thinking back and reflecting. I've been involved in teaching IT for over 30 years, and I saw this picture online, and it reminded me of the very first lab that I taught in back in the early 80s. This is around 1982. Those are Atari 800 computers. Those are a computer lab. You notice that there's still a chalkboard, so they haven't moved over to the whiteboards yet. They didn't realize that all the chalk dust, generated by those chalkboards could create some problems in the computer lab. But again, this reminded me so much of the first lab that I taught in. I think we had PET Commodores and Apple IIs and Tandy Radio Shack Trash 80 machines. And it hasn't changed much. There are labs like that one in every institution, every college, every high school, labs with powerful computers that students can drop in and work on the applications that they need to learn in the classes that they're taking. Now, the labs are not open all the time. There's usually a schedule, but some are open quite late in the evening, and you can drop in, grab an open computer, work on your assignment. I thought I got this captured from MPC, from Monterey Peninsula College, and this is a beautiful lab that they have at the campus in Monterey. It's a great picture, and as you can see, it's empty. There are no students in here, and that's kind of what we have in all of those labs right now because of the pandemic. Computer possibilities and power, but no way to use them right now. So this created that problem for us, and we thought, well, we have NetLab, we have servers there that can run an app, that can run a desktop operating system like Windows 10. And on that desktop operating system, we can run applications that students need to have access to. So I want to take a minute just to turn it over to Mark to talk about this as well, because you know, I always considered the strength of NETLAB to be the content. The tremendous repository of IT training labs has been a great service to IT students who need to practice those hands-on skills that are demanded by employers. You know, selfishly for me as a teacher, NETLAB has been a dependable companion. It's hard enough for teachers to find time to keep up with the technology. There's really little time to create the labs and the hands-on activities that students need. NetLabs allows sharing of labs and content that provides teachers with more than they can do by themselves. It's been an extraordinary situation we find ourselves in. However, it is access to powerful software applications that is at the top of our list of needs today. We have thousands of students who need access. The NetLab system can provide that too, and add order and the management that teachers really appreciate as well. We've had some good success sharing our NetLab system with colleges and high school business applications, advanced manufacturing, engineering, and digital media programs. And we provide access to those powerful software applications that their students would historically go to those computer labs to use. Those are the labs that are now unavailable to them. So I'm going to pass the mic to Dr. Mark Martin. Again, he's my counterpart for the advanced manufacturing industry sector in the Bay Area. And then to David Hovey, our NetLab Data Center Administrator. Mark has been our Bay Region's champion for his teachers and their students, and David's responsible for making it all work. So Mark.
Yeah, thanks a lot, David. I appreciate it. So, you know, obviously when the COVID hit and kids were, you know, taking classes from home in the spring, you know, we all figured out how to make do, especially those of us with kids and as teachers. And as, you know, it showed that it was going to start, you know, rolling into the fall as well with kids staying at home. One of the big concerns from my end to focus on manufacturing is my sector is, you know, how are kids going to get access to this software that they need in the manufacturing and engineering sector? And that is, you know, a lot of that is CAD, computer-aided design software that they need access to. There's various platforms out there that they use everywhere from SolidWorks, which is kind of an industry standard, to Autodesk products such as Fusion and Revit and AutoCAD. And so we wanted to try to figure out how we could help students get access. Some of that software will run on, you know, PCs. You know, most of it will run on PCs. You got to have a stronger, kind of more powerful PC. Some of it will run on Macs, not all of it. And then certainly if you got a Chromebook, as most of you know, being in the IT sector, is that runs very little CAD software unless it's a web-based or browser-based type of software, which is, there aren't that many out there. So we wanted to try to figure out what we could do. And I looked at, you know, getting them connected with, you know, helping them where needed with the remote desktops as far as talking to the instructors about it. IT folks obviously are aware of that and they have that knowledge. But again, as you probably know, as IT folks, the schools, certainly the high schools, were just overwhelmed with everything from trying to figure out how to get the teachers set up to be able to teach from home, as well as getting students, just getting them access, making sure they had computers, making sure they had, you know, appropriate internet setup, et cetera. So kind of overwhelming there. And then they obviously had a range of different teachers they had to work with to try to help them. And so I was trying to figure out what I could do on the manufacturing side. So I did a number of webinars around kind of remote desktops, and then also looked at virtual machines. And so I knew about the NetLab, and I talked to Richard about it. Would there be a possibility of running this software on it? And I'm going to share my screen real quick. If that's okay. Oh, I'm going to need to get a permission. If you can do that, I can just show it real quick. But so what we wanted to do is we wanted to, let me find it, is, you know, run it on NetLab. Can you see my screen okay? Yep, okay. So here's the setup that we have, and David Hovey has been tremendous in helping us get this all set up and doing it quickly. Is the, you know, different software and Autodesk software, which does require licensing. It's free, but we are, you know, it is having to run through a licensed server. And so these are the three different softwares that we have. I'll just power one up here for a second while I'm talking. I also looked at, using AWS services for virtual machines, and I actually have that set up as a backup. Initially we weren't sure how well the CAD software would perform on the computer, on the servers that are at Cabrillo College. They don't have graphics cards in them, but once we got it set up and tested and had teachers test it, they seemed to, feel that it worked, well enough for what they're doing, especially high school teachers, which are some of the ones that are hit hardest. So we're running the software. We have AWS as a backup if we have capacity issues. And, so far it seems to be working well. We're having, teachers tell us that it's really helped them out and that they didn't have access otherwise. Some high schools actually, at least initially, were very reluctant to do remote desktops into their network. I think some of them have come around to deciding that is, appropriate, or they can do it from a security perspective. But I think there are a range of others that either don't have the bandwidth to handle it, or still, not willing to do that. So these virtual machines are their only option in order to get their students access, especially those who have Chromebook. Okay, I'll leave it at that and see if you have any questions for me. And
yeah, there's a question on there, and this one might be better for David to answer, from Sable. David, I don't know if you saw that. It's, what tools are they using to manage the remote access? We're just doing it through NETLAB. So, I
mean, I talked to the teachers about one option is remote desktops, but then I also talked to them that virtualization through NetLabs or AWS is the other project that I was working on. So kind of giving them different pathways to go back to their IT administrators to talk about. So.
Yeah, we had, most of the colleges were kind of a no-go on having students come into their network and use their computers running and keeping them running 24/7 like we do with our NetLab. So, this is a possibility. We've actually been underutilized in our resources so far. So we have extra resources and a plan to make this work for the time being, and maybe well beyond. When we get back to somewhat normal, this still might be a great option.
If any of you are interested in the state of California, you contact me. I'm going to put a posting on the chat box as to where you can kind of sign up for it if you want to get access to this. Again, we have NetLab. There are some capacity concerns, but I actually have AWS as a backup if that hits capacity and we can't get more servers in time. Or we could also talk about doing it on other NetLab servers throughout the state if somebody's interested in that and helping out. Because right now I have people signed up everywhere from San Diego up to Northern California. Okay, I'll leave it over to David now.
Okay, I'm not entirely sure everything I missed because the internet just cut out at exactly the worst moment.
Well, we were just kind of, Mark explained what he's doing. He did a demo on the Autodesk application. Just wanted to, you're the one who put this together, David. So we just wanted you to perhaps tell us how you made this happen.
For the Autodesk products, Mark put me in contact with someone from Autodesk who gave me direct download links that I am explicitly prohibited from sharing with anyone. That was the download links for the sign-on version of the software. Use that to install. Later on, we scrapped that and went with the key installation server, which I had to kind of brush up very quickly on those to get that running. The actual install of the software itself was pretty straightforward. Licensing was a bit more of a challenge, as well as actually just physically getting the installers for the programs was also a bit of a challenge. Same can be said for the Adobe suite. And since we weren't able to get our hands on a system with GPU for whatever reason, those seem to be kind of elusive. And I instead went with essentially beefing up every other possible aspect of the VMs that were using AutoCAD and Adobe that I could think of. without bogging down the systems too much. So I gave them a boost in CPU cores, a boost in available RAM, and that seems to be running okay for most instructors.
Great. Yeah, so we were so happy to have David on board, and I know we're trying to get him some help as we address the issue of the pandemic. So let me just show us right now what kind of applications we have running. So again, these are business applications that we've been doing for a while. So QuickBooks and Office 2016 and Office 2019.
And Office 365.
And Office 365 through NETLAB. Okay.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do that, you know, but I think I would recommend 2016 or 2019 where you get a little more, you know, access to their applications. And then we've added all those Autodesk applications that Mark mentioned on a single, you know, Windows 10 image. We had the capacity. We were only at 1/3 of our capacity actually on our NetLab system. So we've spun up those additional NetLab systems and have them dedicated to the you know, the Autodesk applications, and then to Adobe Creative Clouds, which that's our next group that we're a little bit afraid of the demand for Adobe Creative Cloud, because almost every high school, almost every college has a program in digital media as well. So, whoops. And let me just back up here. And then we're currently testing some other applications to help the animation folks as well on there. So just a quick rundown before we wrap up and leave some time for questions. Remember, on our NetLab, we go to our URL. Students from a web browser with an internet connection, on a Chromebook, even on their phone, they can do some of these labs as well. They need a username and a password to connect. Once they connect, they get a very simple screen to make a lab reservation. And so I'm going to go ahead and click schedule a lab for myself, or it's lab time for the student. I'm going to want to do the Fusion 360. I think we've changed this image now to the Autodesk one. So we would say Autodesk on there. A student would click on that and then pick a time. So I've got to update this slide too. We've got multiple computers. So if you can imagine that empty computer lab, a student can walk in and sit down at any of the computers that are there and begin working on that application. That's what we have here. I think David, you have 32 instances of that virtual machine that a student should certainly be able to find time on a 24/7 calendar schedule to be able to sit down and do their applications. Once they make the lab, they can click on enter the lab. You click on that and just they'll get an image like here that will represent that Windows 10 desktop and the lab that they're walking into. Click on that, and like Mark shows you, they'll actually get a Windows 10 desktop. They can click on the Autodesk program. They'll need to sign in with their license account, and it's free. Once they do that, then they can actually get into the system. And then most importantly, for me as a teacher and for other teachers, is you can log on to NetLab as an instructor. There, you'll have more tools to manage the classes, manage the user counts, and many more things too. But you can see there are different courses we offer: Adobe, Autodesk, MS Office, QuickBooks, whatever it might be. Here's that A+ course that Jason talked about. You can click on a course. You can keep track of your students to see how many labs they've done, how many hours they've attended. You know, those hours, we have colleges that are reporting that as part of their FTES for the year and getting a portion of for that. So that's really what we have to offer. Just was a COVID-19 update. We made a lot of progress in a short amount of time. We're still working on it. You know, we think that this is you know, a service that will probably continue beyond the pandemic and once we're back to normal, and that perhaps institutions may rethink their, you know, purchase of expensive hardware for a dedicated lab that only gets minimal use, and during times like this might not have any use at all. So here are our contact email addresses for David and Mark. I think Mark has put in some links in the chat as well. Just I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Steve, for the last few words here. We got about 10 minutes left.
Richard, one
Yeah.
other thing, and I know,
Sure.
and not being an IT person, I wondered whether or not I should say this, but because we don't know if it's going to work, but we had 20 refurbished servers donated that we're going to be testing out, hopefully maybe today or early next week, that we added a graphics card to. And I don't know how well they'll perform, but I don't know that we will need all 20 of them. If they perform acceptably, and we need some for the Cabrillo Fab Lab, or I'm sorry, the NetLab, that we'll use them, but we might have some that could be used by others, again, if they determine that they perform well enough with the graphics card.
Yeah, great, Mark. And I think you forgot to mention that you were also instrumental in getting a nice monetary donation from the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, I believe, right, to help us too.
Yeah.
Right? Something like $80,000, something like that. That's amazing.
Yeah, 70,000. So yeah.
Oh,
Hey,
wonderful.
Mark,
Yes.
for the good of planning, the key metric that helps performance in this case is the maximum amount of memory that the servers can hold and how many channels they have to memory. So for example, some processors have 2 channels, others have 4, others have 6. With that, I've been seeing that servers, even that are long in age, can support enough simultaneous users to be useful in exactly this kind of shared hardware situation.
Okay. Yeah, as I said, it would help to figure it out and see if these will work.
Yeah, so Courtney, I would have you, connect with David. He's the one that ultimately is going to be testing these systems out, and with some help as well. But great. So that's it for our presentation. We're happy to share this with anyone, and we know that through the NetLab users group that there are other implementations of NetLab up and down the state. And Steve, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. I'm going to stop my share here.
All right, and Richard, if you could just kind of comb through the chat, see if there are any questions that you still think you could answer. If not, we'll save the chat and we'll be able to deal with them later. So we're going to go ahead and plan on having the next NetLab user group on our ICT Educator webinar series as well when we pick a date. We haven't really picked that. The goal is quarterly. And I think from the number of people here that are new to it and the expanded reach to K through 12 and certainly all the work that you guys have been doing. And I want to thank you, Richard, Jason, Mark, and Dave for being the innovators in this space. One big question still hangs there, and that is how can other college systems who have created a NetLab hub imitate what David is doing with the Bay region? And is that the scope of the NetLab user group to help others succeed in the same way?
Yeah, I think that's what we want to do, and we'll certainly share that through the user group. I think we have like 57 members in that user group, and looking for more. It's I'll share that website. There's a way to sign up, so you can have privileged access to some of our content there, and hopefully we'll get up to updating some of that as well.
Well, maybe we can get a digital badge identified for anybody who's a NetLab user group specialist. And we'll talk to our Credly people next week about that, Peter Janzow. And of course, the week after with Peter Coffey, the future is now. I think you guys are demonstrating that. The COVID thing may be the thing that tripped a lot of this and brought it in, but this is all stuff that's been waiting to happen. It just forced the issue. And Mark, as a RD in a different sector, your experience understanding how this IT thing works, what would you say to other regional directors in other sectors about getting comfortable with working with NetLabs?
Well, I mean, I have a little bit of a technical background. I'm an engineer, and I've played around with computers, but it's very simple in the sense of there's a link, at least for the Cabrillo system. There's a link that you click on, which I think Richard put in there, the opennet cabrillo.edu or showed. You log in, and then from a student perspective, there's a couple of clicks and you're into the virtual desktop. And at that point, it's just like being in front of the computer. From the instructor, there's a couple more steps of getting students set up and things like that. But it was very simple to use. And if you're really interested, I put that link to a discussion group, and you can even look at the webinar that we walked through it. but the discussion group kind of gives a step-by-step list of kind of the steps a teacher would have to take to get set up. And it's not that difficult. So if you have that NETLAB sort of set up already, getting those instructors set up is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, we have a little toolkit, a sort of a golden book on how to get started available that we could share as well.
And that's actually on that discussion group. That's the links in the chat. That all the how-to guides are at the bottom as well.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is good. I mean, a long time ago when NetLab people started spending money on it, and it seemed like it was this toolkit for people to tinker with. We said we need a users group, and it's grown and it's blossomed, and wonderful things have happened. And I want to thank all of you involved with that. So this entire webinar has been recorded. We'll edit out the oohs and ahs, and we'll have the transcript and the PowerPoint slides on our website, probably usually in less than a week, and you'll all get a notice of that. And so you can send out that link to people who missed this, that you think ought to see it, and they can look at it in its condensed form, or just read the transcript, or just see the slides. So once again, our goal is to make this stuff readily available and accessible, this wonderful information to all of you. Are there any other questions or things to deal with at this time? Anybody have a final statement or anything? If not, then thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.